Howdy folks, Dave here at Thunder Mesa Studio, where I am carving out a little bit of time this week to work on my Gruesome Gulch mini layout. You might remember I announced that in a previous video with the personal challenge of trying to get 99.9% of it done before Halloween this year. And of course, one of the most time-consuming things in any kind of build like this is the structures. I like to scratch build most of my own structures, and even if I was going to build them from kits, it would take some time. So, that said, I wanted to jump right in to the structures and get a head start on that, even though at this point the layout is nothing more than a plan and a basic bit of bench work that I've built. So I'm getting started on the structures. And the main thing I want to accomplish two things. One is to, of course, have a structure that I can use in the layout, but the more important thing is to establish the aesthetic for all of the structures on the layout. I kind of want them to be a little bit more caricatured than what you see on the regular Thunder Mesa layout or what you might see on a normal ON30 layout, if there is such a thing. So a little bit more caricatured, a little bit more, on the nose with the theming. I don't want anyone to have any question about what they're looking at. And I thought a good place to start would be with one of the small structures, the newspaper office. So I've gone ahead and created a plan for the newspaper office, and I've laser cut some parts, and I'm going to be building that right now. Now, in order to get all the structures done that I need to get done for this thing, I'm going to use every trick in the book and every shortcut I know. And so I'm going to be relying heavily on the laser and other shortcuts to get all of these structures done. So here I've already made a start on the newspaper office, the Gruesome Gulch Epitaph. The last word in news, rather ominous. I've got some laser cut parts. This is some 1/16 of an inch thick basswood that I like to use for walls. The front wall is mostly MDF, but there's going to be some little tricks going on there. I've already done some distressing and staining of the wood. I took a razor saw and went through and added grain to all of the boards. And then I used my hobby knife to go back and add some knot holes to the boards. And then I went down along the bottom and really distressed the heck out of the bottom of the boards down here where they would meet the ground. This all of these structures for Gruesome Gulch give me an opportunity to do a lot more weathering than I usually do on the Thunder Mesa structures where they're more new. It's more of a boomtown atmosphere than a ghost town. So that's going to be some fun. Another little cheat I've got cooked up is the front wall of the building and the graphics. I did all of this in Photoshop, and these are some photorealistic CG textures of actual wood that I created the graphics on top of, and gave them a nice aged patina kind of ghost lettering look, and faded and running down the side, kind of spooky looking. And now the challenge, of course, is to go back and match the color. And speaking of color, I want everything part of the aesthetic of these structures. I want them all to be kind of desaturated and washed out, not bright and shiny and colorful. So even where there's color like red and blue here, it's all very desaturated and kind of washed out and faded back. So that's really the look I'm going to go for with the whole thing. And what I'll do with this is all going to get cut out and then applied to the front wall here. And, nobody will ever know that it's not real wood. Oh, and the other thing, I started in on the roof truss. And I wanted a full trussed roof on this because I want part of the roof to be open, broken, so you can see in and you'll be able to see the rafter trusses and stuff like that through holes in the roof. And that's, again, part of the ghost town aesthetic I'm going for here. All of this decorative trim, the doors and windows and everything, have been cut from some 25 thou laser board. And I think I can actually start gluing all this up on here. I can build it right on top of this because it's all going to be painted kind of the same color. So let's get started on that. So this first piece, just kind of the entire entryway, the door and window frame. Make sure it is properly aligned. Next I'll start building this spooky transom window up here above the door. I didn't write myself any instructions. I mean, I took some notes, but I basically laid all this stuff out and cut it, and I'm working from memory here as to where everything goes in my plan. It'd be a shame if I forgot and messed up my own structure. So this all just gets built up in layers. And yes, for those wondering, I did take a lot of inspiration from Disneyland's Haunted Mansion, the Hall of Doorways there. Though my design above the door is a little bit different. Not quite as ornate as the Rolly Crump designed transoms. But it was about as ornate as I could get away with in this scale. Now I'm putting on these little coffin-shaped panels. There's 3 on each side. Are you detecting a theme here? Not exactly subtle. Doing the trim on the windows here, I intentionally broke one. Starting to give it that ghost town look. A little bit of extra weathering. Now I can start on the cornice up here at the top. I absolutely love these skull corbels. And yes, they are a direct steal from the Haunted Mansion on the doors. They actually look a little bit more Art Deco than Victorian here, but I'll allow it. Actually, they have kind of an Aztec death whistle look, which is unintended, but I'll take it. Cool, man. Top of this gets a O-scale 2x4. At the very top, got some 1/16 of an inch thick basswood, which I think should work quite nicely. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and install the window frames also, because shouldn't be any problem to put the glazing in from the back. Should be pretty straightforward. And that way I can go ahead and just prime and paint this whole thing as one complete unit. I've got all my parts laid out here, and now I'm going to go ahead and get a coat of gray primer on all of these. I've also, let me show you, I've masked off the stained wood on the back, which is the back of the false front that will be visible. Now, I like the look of this gray primer. I'm going to use it, but I want to sponge over with some lighter gray. I'm going for is kind of a mottled M-O-T-T-L-E-D, mottled gray on gray look. I'm just using, this is a sea sponge, but you could use a regular kitchen sponge to get a similar effect. So for the actual trim color, I want kind of a slate blue. So I'm mixing up, this is some Vallejo blue, some black, and some of that light gray, that granite gray. And I'm just going to dry brush it on. There we go. That's the color we want. So with the dry brushing, that earlier step with the sponging shows through nicely. And the final step will be to go back and dry brush gray over all of this again to bring the details out and to age it even more. Actually, before I put that final dry brush highlight on, I'm going to do something I don't usually do on my structures. I'm going to go back and put a dark wash over everything. This is just some diluted black. This is the stuff I use to do my scenery. Just wanted to darken this up just a little bit. Unfortunately, I used a waterproof wood glue when I was putting this together, so I shouldn't have any issues there. Yeah, that's looking good. I'm just going to let that dry now. Stop messing with it. All right, now I'm taking my light gray, mixing more of it in with that slate blue color. Now, go back and dry brush on some highlights. Using a semi-stiff brush, which works well for this. That's the look we're going for right there. And for the final pass, use the pure light gray sparingly. Usually just on the tops of things. So I created this graphic for the front of the building, for the lettering and all that, using Adobe Photoshop and some downloaded CG wooden textures that I found online for the boards. And this is really the best technique I've ever found to do stuff like this. I printed out on some high quality Epson matte presentation paper, the highest possible quality photo settings on my home printer, and it's just an inkjet print. You could also use a laser print. I prefer an inkjet for this kind of thing because it has a much more matte finish than laser prints do. To put it on here, it's supposed to represent clapboard. And so if I just glued it on there like that, it would look kind of flat. So I actually have multiple printouts so I can cut out the boards and overlap them one by one to create that kind of clapboard look with the painted lettering on it. So that's what I'm engaged in now. It's a little time consuming, so probably time for a time lapse, don't you think? Well, I think that turned out pretty okay. Now I've already started putting some glazing in the windows. I'm using some clear acrylic, and I'm adding some cracks and breaks to it because, you know, nothing says spooky ghost town like broken windows. And then before I install it, I spray the back of the glazing with some acrylic matte finish, kind of a dull coat, so you can't quite see through the windows as well. I should be able to snap that off now. There we go. Now I can just glue the panes into place with a little bit of canopy glue. For the transom window up here, I've got something special in mind. I cut a piece of acrylic to fit, and then I used some construction paper behind it to kind of give it the look of colored glass, and in this case purple, which is a nice complement to the rest of the structure, and will really make that transom window pop. Nice thing is I could use the matte acrylic spray as an adhesive to hold that construction paper on there, so I didn't need any other glue. See what I mean? I think that looks pretty cool. I want to have some blinds in the windows too, or the remnants of blinds, I should say. So I've got some green construction paper. I'm just ripping it up at random here along the bottom edge. I'll take my watercolors and just take my gray wash and dirty them up a little bit. And we just kind of crumple them up. Get some folds and creases in them. And with that, I think the front of the structure is done. I'm not going to do the door yet, not until I have the whole thing assembled. I want to have the door kind of half open, mysteriously beckoning you inside. Now I think I'm going to start on the side walls. I'm going to start by attaching one of the side walls to the floor along that edge. And now I'm going to brace the corners, the internal corners, with some 4x6. These, of course, will not show in the finished model. Now I can go ahead and put the back wall on. Now the other side wall. And before I get any further on this, I'm going to go ahead and paint the entire interior flat black. And for the sides and the back wall, I'm going to dry brush on very light blue-gray. Try to bring it up to the shade of the front wall. Now I'm going back over all of it with a wire brush. Really kind of blend it all together. Give me that weathered look that I want. That's pretty darn close. Glue this front roof truss into place. And then I think we can put the front wall on. Before I move on to the roof, I want to do a little bit more weathering on the sides here. Give it a little bit more of that abandoned building look. So I'm cutting all the way through this board, or the cutting through the scribe lines for this board, so I can kind of offset it a little bit. Now I can just do something like this. So I've cut this one out completely, beat it up quite a bit, broken it. Now I'm going to glue it back in. Now once again, I'm going to use my watercolors and just add a little bit more weathering here, especially where these boards come together. Great thing about using watercolors is, you get too much on there, you can always just add a little more water and lift it off. And bring out these knots a little bit too while I'm at it. I want to have this side door look like it's boarded up. So I got some scrap pieces of wood here. I'll put some nail holes in those. So I want to show you this. I'm going to have some spooky lighting inside these, I've decided. Some blue, kind of a blue glow in there. So I've added a diffuser back in the back there. That's just a piece of clear acrylic, and I've sanded both sides with some 800 grit sandpaper to fog it. I've also put a lid on there so the light won't come through the top, and the LED will go in this hole right down here. It'll just sit right on top of that. I've got a coat of gray primer on my roof truss. Now most of this isn't going to be visible, just maybe through a couple holes in the roof, but still wanted to add a little bit of weathering to it, just for the parts that you can see or will be able to see, especially down here in the rafter tails that stick out. So I'm just dry brushing on a little bit of this, that light gray. And now I think I can install this thing. Get that roof truss in there. All these rafters lined up with these slots. Yep, that looks good. Put it down in there. Now I can put these last pieces of trim onto the walls. And these overlap at the corners like that. Now it's time to finish up the front door. There's the detail of a lock plate that's etched in. I want to paint that with some, this is some metallic black. I've already drilled a little hole here to receive a track nail. This is a Pico track nail, which I like better than the Atlas track nails for doorknobs because they're a little smaller, a little bit closer to the scale size. I'll use some CA to glue that in there. I want to have the door partially open, like it's beckoning you inward. So back in the olden days, before there was plywood, the way you would make a roof like this was you would lay, slats across these trusses, and then the shingles or other roofing material would be nailed to those slats. I'm not going to do all the slats. I'm actually using some chipboard for the roof, and I wanted to have some holes in the roof. And so I've just gone and cut it out around here and left the look of slats there. And now I'm going to put a little stain on that so it'll match the rest of the structure, the rest of the wood, not look so much like cardboard when it's showing through. And once I get shingles on that, That's going to look pretty cool. Now I can glue these roof panels on. Just like that. That should just slide in there. I love it. Looks like the bones are showing through. So for the roofing itself, I'm using some bar milled weather gray O-scale shingles. Just putting those on one strip at a time and doing some extra work around where the hole in the roof is. But I also wanted to add the remnants of a smoke jack because this place would have had a stove, I assume. So I've just got a piece of heat shrink tubing. I'm just going to glue that right in this this opening here, as if the roof has collapsed all around the stovepipe. Yeah, like that. All right, moving on. Got the shingling all done, including a row of cap shingles up here on the top. And now I'm just doing something I think is really important with paper shingles like this, especially if they're printed on white paper like these bar mill shingles are. You have to go back and paint any exposed white edges of paper. And I like to use my watercolors for that, just a little cobalt blue and burnt sienna mixed together to make a nice weathered gray. Just going around, see any place I can see that paper. Cover that up. Nice thing about the watercolors is they'll just soak right into the edges of the paper. Another good step is to go around with the hobby knife and lift a few individual shingles here and there. It's an old trick, but still works. Finally, we'll do a little bit of weathering with some chalk dust. Get some rust on this stovepipe here. This is orange mixed with some terracotta. Now, just want some different shades of kind of blue-gray. Some white, black, some light blue. Dirty up the windows. It's kind of fun to be able to pull out all the weathering stops for a change. And I think that's it. My first structure for Gruesome Gulch is done. And I've got to say I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. I'm very pleased with this. Unfortunately, I don't have any place to show it off. I don't have a layout to try it out on yet, so we're going to have to improvise. And that's going to be a wrap on this one. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you'll hit like and subscribe if you want to follow along with projects like this, both on the Thunder Mesa layout and my new little project of Gruesome Gulch. You can also follow us on Instagram at thunder.mesa or see what's new on the Thunder Mesa Studio website at thundermesa.studio. And if you really like what we're doing here and want to show your support, you can head on over to patreon.com/thundermesa and show your support there, just like these nice folks did. Until next time, keep moving forward, everybody, and adios for now.